Well, welcome everybody. This is just a little presentation on Netmiko. So this is primarily for my students and the Students in Network Engineering LinkedIn group. So let me show you, for those that might be watching this and not familiar with this, but this is a group of Cabrillo College and University of California, Santa Cruz students that are in or interested in network engineering. So we have a little group that we've started, and everybody is pretty much welcome to join. But this is the Students in Network Engineering. Okay, I'll keep that up for just a moment so you can see the group if you're interested in getting in touch with me or the group. So that's it right there. All right, so what I want to do is talk about Netmiko and why I feel this is a wonderful way to introduce students into the world of network programmability and automation. So traditionally, our Cisco network infrastructure students, call them Cisco IT students or CCNA students, but these are students that are taking classes in Cisco or any networking introduction to networking course. That includes routing and switching. In the world of Cisco NetAcad, this includes Cisco CCNA courses, Net Essentials, Net Basics, etc. So one of the big developments in the world of network engineering over the last at least 10 years has been the world of network programmability and automation. And the idea that we can no longer just program or configure devices one at a time using the command line interface. I'll talk about that later in later courses that you'll see that I'm working with. But anyway, Cisco has developed a set of curriculum and certifications called Devnet. And that's where this is covered, or at least part of it. And it's really meant for kind of software developers or people on the software side, maybe computer science students, but it really is the future of networking. So what the DevNet courseware tends to lend itself more to the development side and not to the network infrastructure side as much. So my goal has been, how do we bridge this? How do we get our students over to this world of network automation and programmability? I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. But first of all, I'm going to give a presentation today on Netmiko. And why Netmiko? First of all, if you know just a little bit of Python, you don't have to know very much. And I have some YouTube videos you watch 5 or 6 of these videos, about 20 minutes each, 30 minutes maybe. That's all you need to know. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But a minimum amount of code. Okay. Now I talked about the DevNet courses. They kind of use these in their more advanced labs using APIs and data types. And so I want to do more of a step-by-step approach to network programmability and automation. So first of all, Netmiko. Don't have to know much Python. And you don't have to know much Cisco iOS. You can have your first lab on Cisco iOS, be first introduced to Cisco iOS, and start with Netmiko as well if you know a little Python. Okay. So one of the advantages of this, as opposed to other tools that we can use that are also very valuable, is that you get to use both Python and your Cisco iOS commands. Okay, so it reinforces those for the beginner. It's a very easy lift. All you got to know is just a little bit of Python and a little bit of iOS. But the beauty of this, well, first of all, one other thing I want to mention, it's agentless. What does that mean? Don't worry about it, but it means you don't need any kind of special software on the devices themselves, the routers and switches that you're connecting to. Okay, and to me, what's very important about all this is as you learn more, as you grow with Cisco iOS, as you grow in your learning of Python, you can do more and more with Netmiko and Cisco iOS. I'm going to show you some examples here in just a moment. Okay, so Netmiko, there's not much to it. Don't worry about this. I'll show you this in a moment. But basically, you connect to the device. Then, if you need to, you enter privileged exec mode. If you're issuing any commands that require that level, you can send commands like show commands, and this doesn't need privileged exec mode. You can configure devices. You can save your configs, and you can then disconnect from the session. And I'm going to show you an example. Actually, here's a complete Python program with Netmiko. What does this do? Well, as we see here, you just import Netmiko library. Here's the IP address of our device. Here's the operating system. Here's the SSH username and password. Here's the privileged exec password if I need that. And all I'm doing here is I'm establishing this connection, okay, and assigning this to a variable, an object called connection. And with this variable, I'm using different Netmiko commands, send command, and here's a Cisco iOS command. I just want to send the command. I'll show you this in a moment. And then I disconnect from my iOS. It's that easy. But you may be wondering, can I do this for more than one device? Oh, of course. Do this for many, many, many devices. The beauty of automation. Can I ask the user to enter in these credentials? Maybe I don't like having them hard-coded. Probably not a good idea to have the password in the program. Certainly. What if I want to configure the device? No problem. What if I want to configure multiple devices at the same time? Can I have files that have all the configuration commands for each individual device, separate files for each, and use that? Yes, because here's the beauty of all this. As you learn more about Python, you can do more with Cisco iOS. It's really no more Netmiko. It's just as you grow with Python. But you can get started right away, knowing very little Python. So to show you that, how much Python do I need to know? Because what's very little for one person may be a whole lot for somebody else. This is all you need to get started. Okay, import the library. And you maybe are new to Python, have never had to import something. It's just, I'm importing a library and want to use these commands, methods. You know how to print, know what variable is, know what a list is, that helps. And a simple for loop, that's it. Now I'll show some of this. The try and except to take care of any exceptions when there's errors in the program. And I show this because a lot of example code out there includes the dealing with exceptions. And then over here, if you want to start working with files and dictionaries, JSON functions, objects, just, you know, to scale what you do, give yourself more options. And yes, but you can get started right away. Okay, so what are we going to do here? I'm going to show you some few things. Is for one or multiple devices, you can display you can display device information. You can configure devices, and you can save configuration. For more than advanced, again, this is not more Netmiko. It's just more Python. Okay, I mentioned already, you can create separate files with different iOS commands for each device. You can do something called embedded event manager. That's a Cisco thing. So also, as you learn more about Cisco, you can do, or Cisco iOS and routing and switching, you can do more with Netmiko as well. But this is just what if you were sending a bunch of configuration commands. This happens all the time. You're configuring something over a remote connection using SSH, and darn it, Rick blew it. He gave a command that disabled his SSH connection. Happens more than I care to mention. When you get in the world of networking, it'll happen to you too. So anyway, this is just something that says, hey, run this set of commands later. okay, without no SSH connection needed, but that way it doesn't disconnect me from SSH, and you can run these commands. You can request users to enter in the SSH, privileged passwords, do all kinds of neat things. So what I'm getting at is this. Okay, so here is kind of the world of network automation and programmability from, from how I think we should be, and what I want to do in moving students towards this world. All right, so we really have two groups here. I'm going to talk about this group here, and there's another group over here first. As you see, I'm talking about Netmiko, so I have it over here. All you need, you can do this with any Cisco iOS gear, and I like using Physical Lab just to give us more, it's important that we understand how to do the connections, but this can be done over a virtual lab as well. But yes, you don't need a virtual lab and VMs to do this. You just use any Cisco physical equipment, a little bit of Python, and that's it. Okay, to get started. Now I got JSON here. Don't worry about what that is. That's a data format. We'll talk about that actually in another video coming up, another little webinar I'm doing with Napalm. But you don't need to use JSON. That's why I have it in lowercase here. This here is Napalm, which is similar to Netmiko. Napalm and Nornir, they're all based on each other. That's why I have them kind of step by step here. But this does similar to Netmiko, but it uses generic commands, not iOS commands, and gives you the output in JSON by default. And then Nornir is something else. But anyway, just showing how easy this is to get started. Okay, so these are all Python programmability, and you'll see an example. These next two are very similar to Netmiko. Over here is Ansible. This is a tool, software that you can download and access using YAML files, another structured data file. We'll talk more about that later. But that would be in its own group. So anyway, this is a great way to get started. We'll talk more about all of these later. Cisco Devnet really focuses on this over here. They do a little bit of Ansible, but it's a little bit more involved. Okay, first of all, they use netconf and restconf, which runs on different Cisco iOS devices. So typically we need VMs to do this if you're doing this in a lab setting. You also have to be more familiar with data formats and something called Yang. Talk more about all this later. But there's netconf and restconf. Netconf uses remote procedure calls and SSH. RESTconf is REST API based. You can use Postman, but to do either of these things efficiently and effectively, you need to be using Python. So you can see there's more involved in this. But this is a great start. And this is all stuff that's used out there. Okay, so this isn't like I'm showing you something that's only in a student lab setting. No, this is real world stuff. All right, so all I'm trying to do, and this is the beginning of it, is how do we move from here to here? All right, I've been presenting on this long enough. What I want to do right now is show you what this actually looks like. Okay, so let me clear this here down at the bottom. I'm going to show you our first Netmiko program. Okay, so this one here is all I'm going to do is import Netmiko. I've already installed it, and I have labs on all of this. Okay, so students in my network engineering group, I'll post it in on LinkedIn. Others, just contact me if you need it. All right, or join the group. All right, so here we import Netmiko. What I'm doing is establishing connection. This is the IP address of my router. It's a Cisco iOS, SSH username and password. And then I'm basically created a connection. And using that connection, I'm sending the command show IP interface brief, and then I'm disconnecting the connection. All right, let's see what happens. Hopefully I've got my SSH connection going. There we go. Just like the same output you'd see from Cisco iOS. Okay. And by the way, one of the first things you'll want to do is make sure you have those connections. So I'm showing you here, this is, I use Zoc, but this here I have my local console connection, but this is just making sure I have all my SSH connections. Yeah, I've disconnected since then. But as long as you can SSH into the device, you can do any of this. Okay, let me show you the next one. This one here is similar, but what I'm going to do is show a running config. And to show the running config, we need privileged. We need to go into the privileged exec mode. Okay, so here's my privileged password. Here I go in privileged exec mode, then I can show the running config. Let's do it. Let me clear this. Let me run it. And there's my running config. Okay. Very easy. Okay, let me show you something else here. Okay, what if I want to show IP interface brief that we did earlier, but I want to show it for multiple devices? This is a simple Python list of 3 IP addresses. Okay, this is the name of my list. And this is as complicated as we need to get to really do some cool things. And that's just a simple for loop. So here's my list of devices, and I'm going to loop through each device in the list. And instead of giving the IP address statically, it's using the IP address from this list. So device in devices. So first time it will be this IP address, then this, and then this. And that's what gets assigned to IP, username and password. And I'm just going to do show IP interface brief. Let's do it. And clear again. 1, 2, 3. There we go. That easy. And fun. I think it's pretty cool. Now, what you have to remember is typically, why we're doing this. Well, can I just do this on 1 or 2 devices? Yes. But what if you're managing dozens, hundreds, thousands of devices? Okay. This one here just shows the example of here's my little try and accept statements. Okay, this is to handle exceptions. This is just in case there's an issue with Netmiko, Python, something. What I mean here is, let's say, I'm going to do this here right now, is what if I have an IP address that I can't SSH into? Here's a bogus IP address. It doesn't exist on my network. I have a little 3-router network here that are all interconnected. And this is not one of the routers. Okay, so what would happen? Well, normally what would happen is I'd get a combination of a Python Netmiko error, and it would time out on me, the SSH connection, because it can't connect. And I'd get a bunch of cryptic output. Well, what this does here is it just makes it really nice and easy for me to know what created the problem and doesn't end my program. Okay, so my program would normally end right after this. By the way, I have labs for all of this that walk you through all of this code. Okay, I'll point you to that in a moment at the end. Okay, let's run this and see what happens. Okay, there's the first one. Now it's trying the second one. Look, I got a timeout occurred. But it didn't stop my program. Didn't stop the execution. Continued with the next 2. Okay, that's the try and exception here. Okay, a few more. Let me just show you a couple more here. What if, there it is here. What if I want to do a configuration? Okay, so I'm going to do this for one device. Of course, I can do multiple devices, but I have a list of commands. These, you might recognize this. Okay, this is some Cisco iOS commands for configuring an IPv6 addresses on a couple of router interfaces. This is a great use case for automation. You've already got connection to your network and you want to transition to IPv6. Okay, so in this case, we're just doing one device. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to connect to that device. I got to go in privilege mode because I'm configuring. And here you can see I'm using send config set. Okay, so that lets me send a list of iOS commands. And here's the list that I just showed you up here. And then what I'll do is I'll verify it. I'll send the command show IPv6 interface brief. And of course, disconnect. Let's run this. There we go. Did it happen? Yes, it did. There's my IPv6 addresses on those two interfaces. Okay, just a couple more here. I just want to mention, oh, this is a fun one. My students enjoy this one. This is one that allows you, here's a list of devices. And what are we doing? We're connected. Here's our for loop that'll connect to each device in the list. And then all we're going to do is save the running config to startup config. Okay. So it's saved. So just make sure all of our running configs have been saved. Okay, so I'm going to clear this. Let me run it. Now, what I'll get for output is this is the Netmiko output, showing me that it succeeded. Okay, a couple more. This here, I'm not going to run these, but this is just showing you what if I wanted to get my information, not from a list, but from a file. And I have this long file name here with the path and everything in it. And anyway, I can actually, I'll show you, I can get it from a file. And not only that, what if I wanted to do something like get it from, I could, well, let me go back to this here. So I can actually get it from multiple files as well. Anyway, I've got labs for all of this if you're interested. Okay, and the last one I just want to show you here is this is showing the different devices. So here we have more information with the devices, IP addresses. What if we had different, SSH usernames and passwords, or different versions of iOS, or different devices? This isn't just for Cisco iOS. Okay, could be doing Juniper and others as well. Okay, so anyway, this is just showing that we could do this for multiple devices. And here I'm showing the clock. So I have labs for all this. And yes, let me mention that. Let me just show you where those labs are. If I can find them myself. What did I do with those? Let me show you. So I have a Google Drive that has all my Netmiko stuff, and I will happy to share this with you. But for those of you, so each of the groups of labs, and for example, the very first group of lab. The lab is in the Word document here. And then I have the Python programs. Now, I have them in two kind of versions here. One, the long name, so I know what it is. But what I refer to in the lab, let's take a look at the lab real quick. So the lab walks you through everything. It shows you my topology. Shows you the topology. And I have a lab that, the first lab, by the way, I should show you that, but how to set up this topology. Okay. Talks a little bit about Netmiko. And if you're interested more about Netmiko, if you know Python, you can skip all this if you don't, but just shows you the different methods in the like with the connection handler and things like that. But I walk you through everything. I always display the complete program, explain it, run it. So with all of this, I'll always show you the complete program. I do want to mention what the very first lab here. Go here, this initial setup. And for those of you that would like to use my specific information or coming into the lab to do this, okay. I give you the routers and switches, so how you cable everything, 3 routers, 2 switches. Okay, then I give you this. This is the script. This is the early way that we used to do network automation. We used to write a script like this. Okay, and then I might like just copy this. Then I would, let me go to I would go to my device here. I mess myself up here, and I would just paste it in. Yeah, that was the early day of automation. Copy and paste into the console. And you know, we still do that kind of stuff. I still do that stuff, okay? But now we're not doing one device at a time. We're doing dozens, hundreds, thousands of devices we want to interface with. All right, so if you have any questions or thoughts, please let me know. Again, reachable here in the sign group, Cisco, the SLO group here, students in network engineering, Cabrillo College, University of California, Santa Cruz students. So and that's where this will actually be posted. Okay, great. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the labs. Oh, one last thing. There's this, you know, Rick, always one last thing. I do want to mention this. If you want to get to just all the labs very easily, okay, so you'll have access to all of this. Just go right here to labs, and here are the labs. Okay, right here. You can ignore this setup. This is for my own use, but you can look at it. The little things I have to do to make sure that with my Mac, I have internet connectivity and connectivity to the networks on these routers and switches that I use in the lab at the same time. So anyway, take a look at these if you'd like. All right, enjoy. Thanks for listening.